Okay, Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. Allahumma la sahla illa ma ja'altahu sahlan wa anta taj'alu al-hazana idha shi'ta sahlan. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. We have a couple of slides to finish after finishing fasting last time that are related to Itikaf. Just quick, so we can start with the Zakah. And we have a full course about Zakah today, inshallah. The definition of Itikaf is staying in the masjid by a specific person with an intention. Allah Azza wa Jal said in the Quran, and do not have relations with them as long as you are staying for worship in the mosques, in the masjids. وَلَا تُبَاشِرُوهُنَّ وَأَنْتُمْ عَاكِفُونَ فِي الْمَسَاجِدِ. And do not have any sort of relationship, sexual relationship with them while you are in the state of i'tikaf in the masjid. Narrated by Abdullah ibn Umar, the Messenger of Allah ﷺ used to practice i'tikaf in the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan. And as we know that the last year, the Prophet ﷺ did i'tikaf for 20 days in Ramadan. What are the goals for doing the i'tikaf? Purifying the heart by isolating oneself for worship, Quran, dua, remembrance, and so on. The time for i'tikaf, is there a specific time? Is it only for Ramadan? Of course not. It can be done at any time during Ramadan or outside Ramadan, and can be as short as the period of time to pray. That's why it's better, for example, if we are going in the masjid for prayer, to have the intention of making i'tikaf. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever made an i'tikaf in one of the houses of Allah for a period of time that is suitable for milking a sheep, then that will be for him as if he had freed a slave. Meaning that the period of time to milk a sheep is maybe 15 minutes, which is the duration of the prayer. So that gave an indication that i'tikaf can be done at any time and within any short period of time. The place, it can be done in any masjid, but not in a house or an Islamic center. I'tikaf should be only in the mosques of Allah Azza wa Jal. The rule, it is sunnah at any time, except if the person made an oath. So if the person made what we call a nadhr or oath, then i'tikaf becomes an obligation on him, and he needs to fulfill that i'tikaf. The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever made an oath to obey Allah, let him obey him. So that's an obligation actually for whoever says, I will do that, so he needs to do it. If a person made an oath to do i'tikaf for one day, then he enters before Fajr and exits after Maghrib, because that's the definition of a day. A day is during the daylight from Fajr until Maghrib. So if he made an oath to do an i'tikaf for one day, so he enters before Fajr and exits before Maghrib, after Maghrib. But if he made an oath to make 2 days or 3 days, then the nights need to be included in the i'tikaf. If the person made an oath to do i'tikaf more than one day, the nights become requirement. Conditions of i'tikaf. There are conditions for i'tikaf to be accepted. First of all, the person needs to be Muslim, needs to be sane or differentiating. So the kids who are not differentiating should not be going for i'tikaf, while the kids that are differentiating can go to the i'tikaf. It needs to be in the masjid. It needs to be with intention. It needs to be having a tahara from janaba and menses and nafas. Meaning that you can do i'tikaf while you are not in the state of wudu, but it's better to be in the state of wudu. Permission of the husband to his wife. So only in the case of the wife can do i'tikaf, but she needs to have permission from the husband to do that i'tikaf. Requirements for i'tikaf: to stay in the masjid except for a need. So the person enters the masjid and he cannot leave the masjid except for a specific need. Narrated by Aisha, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, the Messenger of Allah used to let his head in the house while he was in the mosque, and I would comb and oil his hair. When in i'tikaf, he used not to enter the house except for a need. If the person left the masjid without a need, then his i'tikaf is invalid. So meaning that the Aisha radiallahu anha used to be in the hujra, which is the house, which is the house, and the Prophet ﷺ would be having i'tikaf inside the masjid, and he will just give her his head in order to comb his head and to put oil on his head. The person can leave i'tikaf for specific needs, like for eating or for drinking or salat janazah or witness in the court, or sick. He was sick in a disease that might leave some, for example, blood on the carpet in the masjid or anything. So he can leave the i'tikaf, and that will not invalidate his i'tikaf. So he can continue with his i'tikaf. The person during i'tikaf can marry and become a celebrant, to marry people together, can study, can sell and buy, although this is makruh, as we are going to speak about, inshallah, later in this course. Can eat and drink, can have a shower. If he had a wet dream, he needs to have a shower. He cannot stay in his state of janaba inside the masjid, and he needs always to take a shower as soon as possible. Narrated by Ibn Umar that Umar had vowed in the pre-Islamic period to perform i'tikaf in al-Masjid al-Haram. A sub-narrator thinks that Umar vowed to perform i'tikaf for one night. Allah's apostle said to Umar, fulfill your vow. So even Umar ibn Khattab did the oath to do i'tikaf while he was not a Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ said to him, fulfill your vow. What is mustahab in i'tikaf? Making the person self busy during the day and the night with all types of worships, from Quran to remembrance to salah. To be fasting while doing the i'tikaf, this is mustahab, especially if it's not during Ramadan. It's mustahab to be in Mecca or Medina or Al-Aqsa. These are the best places to do i'tikaf, and the best is Mecca, then Medina, then Aqsa. It is mustahab to do it during Ramadan. It is mustahab to stay for the night of Eid and leave to the musalla straight away. So if the person is doing the last 10 nights of Ramadan for i'tikaf, it is mustahab actually to enter before the 20th, so before Maghrib of the 20th on the 19th, and then exit after the Eid prayer, after the Fajr prayer, straight away towards the musalla, where he prays Eid at the musalla, and this is the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. It is mustahab to avoid anything that does not concern him, so he is focusing only on purifying himself. Narrated by Ali ibn al-Husayn from Safiya, the Prophet ﷺ wife. The wives of the Prophet ﷺ were with him in the mosque while he was in i'tikaf. And then they departed, and the Prophet ﷺ said to Safiya bint Huyay, don't hurry up, for I shall accompany you. And her dwelling was in the house of Usama. The Prophet ﷺ went out, and in the meantime 2 Ansari men met him, and they looked at the Prophet ﷺ and passed by. The Prophet ﷺ said to them, come here, she is my wife Safiya bint Huyay. They replied, Subhanallah, how dare we think of evil, O Allah's Messenger? We never expect anything bad from you. The Prophet ﷺ replied, Shaitan circulates in the human being as blood circulates in the body, and I was afraid lest Shaitan might insert an evil thought in your minds. This is to say that the Prophet ﷺ was in i'tikaf, and he left to actually drop his wife to her house and then come back, and that does not actually break the i'tikaf. It is makruh to leave for any reason or leave any of the mustahab things that we mentioned. It is makruh for doing that things that are not of worship during the i'tikaf. What things that invalidates i'tikaf? Leaving the masjid without necessity, intercourse. Allah Azza wa Jal said, and do not have relation with them as long as you are staying for worship in the mosque. Ejaculating with act, leaving Islam, drunk, long unconsciousness, or losing brain, menses, and nafas. All of these actually invalidate the i'tikaf. If the person did what invalidates his i'tikaf, If his i'tikaf is optional i'tikaf, then the previous time will be accepted and he will take reward from that, and he can actually start a new i'tikaf after that. If this i'tikaf was void, then if one day he needs to repeat, if several days he needs to count the days that he made the i'tikaf for, and then after that he can continue what needs to be finished. And then let's speak about today, it's going to be a crash course about Zakah, all things related to Zakah, inshallah, especially things that are related to current day situations with all the new finances and how the Zakat can be applied to them. Zakah is a right in the wealth for specific people at a specific time. So, it's a right, meaning that it's obligation. It's for specific people, so not all people are going to pay Zakah. And at specific time, so it's not all the year, it's specific requirements. What are the wisdoms behind Zakah? To protect the money, support the poor, clean the self from stinginess, thanking Allah Azza wa Jal. All of these are wisdoms for Zakah. It is a pillar of Islam. It was made obligation on the second year, sorry, there is typo here, second year of migration. In Shawwal, on the second year of migration, Zakah was made obligation. There is no Zakah for the Prophets. The Prophets, they don't pay Zakah because they tax-free. Yeah? The Prophets don't pay Zakah. Actually, their money is for the public. They don't actually have wealth. They always share what they have with people. What are the punishments for not paying Zakah? Narrated by Abu Hurairah, the Prophet ﷺ said, on the day of the resurrection, camels will come to their owner in the best state of health they have ever had in the world. And if he had not paid their zakat in the world, then they would treat him with their feet. And similarly, sheep will come to their owner in the best state of health they have ever had in the world. And if he had not paid their zakat, then they would treat him with their hooves and would butt him with their horns. The Prophet ﷺ added, one of their rights is that they should be milked while water is kept in front of them. The Prophet ﷺ added, I do not want any one of you to come to me on the day of resurrection carrying over his neck a sheep that will be bleating. Such a person will then say, O Muhammad ﷺ, please intercede for me. I will say to him, I can't help you, for I conveyed Allah's message to you. Similarly, I don't want anyone to come to me carrying over his neck a camel that will be grunting. Such a person then will say, O Muhammad, please intercede for me. I will say to him, I can't help you, for I conveyed Allah's message to you. So this is to tell that anyone who does not pay zakah, it's going to be carried to the day of judgment. Narrated by Abu Hurairah, Allah's Messenger said, whoever is made wealthy by Allah and does not pay the zakat of his wealth, then on the day of resurrection, his wealth will be made like a bald-headed, poisonous male snake with 2 black spots over the eyes. The snake will encircle his neck and bite his cheeks and say, I'm your wealth, I'm your treasure. Then the Prophet ﷺ recited the holy verse, let not those who withhold. It's in Surah Ali Imran, the verse 180. So these are the punishments of those who do not pay the zakat. Zakah. First of all, speaking about the reason behind the zakah. Number one, for the reason for someone to pay zakah is owning the threshold for 1 full lunar year with the condition of not being in debt, and it is extra from his needs. So, first of all, owning the threshold, and we are going to speak about what is the threshold of the zakah. Second, 1 full moon year or lunar year. It's not a full normal year. Third, with the condition not being in debt. So the person, if he is in debt and he's having the threshold for 1 full year, he is not entitled to pay zakah. And then it's extra for his need. So he doesn't need something urgent for his family, and so it's extra for him. There is no zakah for normal needs like clothing, cars, houses. There is no zakah for that. So if someone bought a house, he doesn't need to pay zakah for that because he's using it. There is no zakah for machines, for example. Someone who is working, he has a workshop, he has machines, who is using them for his, for example, carpenter or welder or whatever. There is no zakah on these machines. Unless these are intended for trading. So someone who is building machines, selling machines, then he needs to pay for this zakat. There is no zakah if there is hopeless debt. So I gave money to X people. The person, he came to me and he said, I'm sorry, I can't pay you the debt. So I gave up. So I'm not going to receive the money back. There is no zakah on that money. Meaning that if I gave someone a debt and the person is going to pay me back in a year or two, that money requires paying zakat because it's my money and it's with him, so I need to pay on that money. If I lost money, lost $10,000, which actually meets the threshold, and then I don't need to pay zakat for that. Then I found them after 2 years, then I need to pay the zakat. Okay? There is no zakat for gems, like pearls, like rubies, whatever.
Precious stones.
Precious stones. There is no zakat for feeded cattle. So if you have animals, you are feeding them, there is no zakat on them. Unless these are just going outside and eating from the normal grass. It's a pillar, giving the money to the poor or the organization. So either we give the money straight to the poor people or give it to an organization. Now let's speak about some crucial things which are the conditions of zakat. Can you please close the door? Yeah. For a zakat to be obligation, there are conditions. Number one, the person needs to be free. And we are all free. There is no slavery anymore. The person needs to be Muslim, although as we said before, the non-Muslims are going to be entitled for punishment based on each individual act in Islam that they were required to do. To be from wealth that requires zakah. Some wealth does not require zakah, and some wealth requires zakah. As we are going to see, there are 5 types of wealth that require zakah. Number 1, which is money, then minerals, then trade, then crops, then unfed cattle. These are the 5 categories that require paying zakah. He needs to have the threshold, which we are going to speak in details about. He needs to have full ownership of that money. So if that condition is not valid, he doesn't need to pay zakat. Example, who can tell us in our day today?
The super fund?
Super fund. Do we have full ownership of the super fund? Can I take the super fund now and buy some stuff with it? No. Then I don't have to pay zakat on it. When I get the money in my hand and I have full ownership of the money, at that stage, I need to pay zakat. Okay? 1 lunar year, even if the amount reduced during the year, but only for the money. So for example, if I have in my account the threshold, but during the year my money was going up and down, so sometimes it's below the threshold, sometimes it's above the threshold. So long as 1 lunar year, I started with above the threshold, I ended with above the threshold, then I pay the zakat, regardless of how fluctuating the money was in my account. Cattle and trade are parts of the zakat as well. Not being in debt. So someone, for example, has in his account $10,000, but he is in debt of $20,000. He doesn't need to pay zakat because a debt can take all of his money. Okay. Additional to the basic needs of people, so the basic needs are there, and then he has the extra money additional to the basic needs, then he needs to pay the zakah, and this is a condition. There is no zakah in minerals other than gold and silver. In general, like minerals, we are speaking about here the gems, or what did we call them, Abdurrahman?
Precious stones.
Precious stones. That money should pay zakah if no will be paid. So, if someone gave money as a debt to someone, and then he knew that that person is going to pay him back the debt, then he needs to pay zakat on the debt that is in the hand of someone else. Okay? So I gave money to Muhammad, and that money is $10,000, which meets the requirement. It has been with him for 1 year. I know he's going to pay it back. I need to pay zakah on the money that is in his hand. Dowry money should pay zakah if fulfill the requirement. So if the woman took the dowry and stayed with her for 1 year and it was above the threshold, then she should pay zakah. The conditions for the zakah to be correct are two, which is intention and then transfer of ownership of the money to the person in need. These are the two conditions for the zakah to be correct. Time of the zakah, when should I pay zakah? When the conditions are fulfilled. Otherwise, for example, if I start every one of us should have his own lunar year. So some people usually they make their lunar year in Ramadan. So what happens is every Ramadan they pay their zakah. You can choose to be that. And what happens is that when the time comes, every day you delay paying zakat, that's a sin. Because it's due. When the zakat is due, and delay without a reason is not acceptable unless there is a need for that delay and there is a benefit for that delay. For the crops, usually the zakat paid and the harvest even if more than one crop a year, so long as the value reaches the threshold, and should be paid when the grains appear. So if I have a land, for example, and I'm planting tomatoes, cucumbers, as we are going to see, these are not entitled to zakat. But for example, wheat, hay, or all of these seeds, and then I plant the first crop, the second crop, 3 crops within 1 year, then I need to pay for each crop, and we are going to speak about the threshold for the crops. The threshold for the zakah in general is 85 grams of gold or 595 grams of silver. We need to come and see how much is the gold nowadays. How much is the gram of gold? Anyone knows? Ladies? Nobody has gold? What? $21.65. So if we are speaking about $21.65.
No, $65.
$65 for a 21 carat.
For the 21 carat.
Yes.
Okay. So if we are speaking $65 times 85, that's $5,500. That's the threshold. So if the person owns that amount of money, then he is entitled to pay zakah. Just a reminder about the link to put the questions. Can anyone remind me?
my.cbox.ws/Thursday.
Okay. _night_. _fiqh. So, and every year we need to calculate the threshold in order to know how much is the threshold, did I meet the threshold or not? How much is the zakah? Is 2.5% from all what you have in there. Zakah on gold mixed with others. For example, nowadays we have the 9-carat golds, which is mixed with platinum, mixed with other stuff. The scholar said, so long as the amount of gold itself reaches the threshold. So if you have a 9-carat gold, then how much is the value of the actual gold within that material? If it reaches the threshold, then you are entitled to pay. Gold jewels should pay zakah if meant for trade, or if more than normal women jewels, or if meant actually for saving some money. Some people, they actually save some money by buying gold. That gold that they save the money through buying that gold is entitled for zakat. If the normal women, they have jewels, for example, they have gold with around $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, that normal women. Now, a woman has $10,000 worth of gold, she needs to pay zakat on that gold, because that's not normal. So the normal is acceptable, but anything beyond that is not acceptable. If the person is buying the gold in order to save money, he needs to pay zakat. If the person is buying the gold because he's waiting for the gold, he knows that the gold is going to raise and he's going to sell it to gain money, that's trade. He needs to pay zakat. But if the woman has just normal gold, which has been bought by her dowry since day one from her marriage, and then she is just using it, she doesn't need to pay zakat for that. Yes?
How about if I'm saving and when I want to sell it, I must pay the zakat for when I
If you are saving the money, and whatever you are saving money, for example, and this is sometimes women do that, which is they save money, and then buy gold and put it aside. The question is, are you using that gold? If you are not using that gold, meaning that you are saving the money in the shape of gold. If your amount of gold reaches the threshold and you have one full year, you need to pay zakat. But if you are buying the gold, you bought the gold for usage, and that's all what you are buying the gold for, then that's fine. But there are some people who actually buy the gold in the intention of saving. So that needs to pay zakat. Okay? Bonds of the houses. Yes, although the question needs to be here, but no problems. Yes?
I can't access the
www.mycbox.
Slash is the other way.
Slash is the other way? Sorry. Yes, sister. You want to ask?
Yeah. I have a question بالعربي.
احكي.
طيب. أنا بعرف إنه الزكاة فيها النصاب، وإذا مثلا الذهب بلغ النصاب أو الفلوس بلغت النصاب. طيب. بالنسبة للذهب يعني نسبة بتاعت النصاب كم؟ وبالنسبة للأموال.
Okay, she's asking about the threshold. We already mentioned here, here's the threshold. 85 grams. Okay? So the value of 85 grams, if we are speaking about gold, it's 85 grams. So if you have more than 85 grams or more of gold, then you need to pay zakah if the intention of that gold is to save or to trade, or it's above the normal what women have, that needs to pay zakah. But if the value of the gold is below that amount, you don't need to pay zakah. Okay? فهمتي؟
يا فهمت، بس ال 85 هي نسبة عادية للذهب اللي بيكون عنده تقريبا كل شيء.
Yes. So if it is, as I said, normal women, they will have around $5,000 to $6,000 worth of gold, and they are wearing it on daily basis. You don't need to pay zakat on this, even though it's reaching the threshold. You are not entitled to pay zakah. You are entitled to pay zakah on the gold, as I said again, that is above the normal women ownership. That's number one. Number two, if a woman every now and then she's saving money and then buying a piece of gold for the future. That money is actually a saving. Now the gold is not actually for her jewels to wear, but for saving money. That needs to pay zakat.
بس احنا بنحتاج لهذا الموضوع لانه بنحتاج انه نحبس فلوسنا.
Yeah, no problems. If you keep your money in the shape of money or in the shape of gold, it's wealth. So you are required to pay zakat on that. It's not too much. It's 2.5%. So how much is the 2.5%? For 1,000 is how much?
$25.
$25 for 1,000. So if you have gold for $10,000, how much do you need to pay? $250 divided by 365 days. It's less than $1 a day. It's not much. It's 2.5. Okay? House bonds. Are they entitled for zakah? Are they considered from the wealth where you need actually to pay zakat on them? What do you think?
What's a house bond?
When you go to rent a house, you need to leave a bond with the owner of the house. That house bond actually is a saving. That's your money. Okay? Do we need to pay zakat on that house bond?
It's not in your possession. It's not in your possession.
It's not in your possession.
You have no
And
guarantee that you're going to get it back.
you have no guarantee that you are going to get it back. So meaning that you do not actually pay zakat so long as it is with the house landlord. Shares and people who are buying shares. Of course, zakah on shares, it's done once a year. If the value of, the profit, if the value of the
FIT.
FIT,
Wrong language.
wrong language, sorry.
And in the next one as well.
Is
Next one
it?
as well.
Is it again the same mistake?
Yeah. Last word.
Okay.
And the last sentence, the very last sentence, second last word.
Okay, so zakat on shares, and you need to understand this because lots of people, they are involved in shares and they buy shares and they sell shares and so on. Shares, people buy it in many reasons. Some people buy it like trading. They buy the shares and then they wait for the share price to go up and then they sell it. So this is trading. So the trading concept applies on them, as we are going to see how we calculate the zakah for the trading. So if the shares, the value of the shares reach the threshold, now we need to think about whether we need to pay zakat or not. If the shares are for trading company, so you are putting your shares in a trading company, like what? Airlines. What else? Any trading company. Woolworth. Or whatever. Okay? So what happens is that for that, the zakah will be on the share price plus the profit that you receive every year. So by the end of the financial year, they will give you profit on the shares. So you calculate how much is the shares value plus how much is the profit times 2.5% and you pay. Now, if the shares are for manufacturing company, that's a different story. Like some company that is manufacturing cars or manufacturing, for example, washing machines or manufacturing whatever. These companies, they have usables. They have machines to manufacture. the values of these machines should not be included in the zakah. So the value of the share actually should be calculated plus the profit minus the cost of the buildings and the machines and the usables. Because in this case, these are not entitled for zakah. Like what we use for our houses, we use our houses, for example, if I have a house that I'm living in, I don't need to pay zakah for my house because I'm living in it. If I have a car, I don't need to pay zakah for that. So zakat for these companies that are manufacturing companies needs to be not the cost of the share, but need to reduce the usables cost. And that's why the share is not straight away, the value of the share is not the straight value for calculating zakah. If the shares are bought for trading purpose only, they're just to buy, sell, then just the value times the 2.5%, even if the shares were bought for a company that is a manufacturing company. Because the reason behind buying the shares is actually purely trading. So meaning that the actual shares became the subject of the trade. So you need to actually pay zakah on the actual shares. If the shares were bought for the profit, meaning that I am buying shares and I'm not intending to sell the shares. I want to get the end of year profit for these shares only. That's my intention. Then that reason makes the zakah only on the profit of the shares. Because the shares are not the subject of the trade. So you are owning things and then you are getting profit. Your zakat is on the profit. Because you are investing. Like it's your work. Like it's your house. Okay? There are natural resources. So we are speaking about things like minerals from earth that are treated with fire, like gold, silver, copper, iron, all of these. They pay 1/5 as zakat. So extracting these natural resources from the ground, the person needs to pay 1/5 for zakat. There is no zakat on the other types of minerals or gems or hydrocarbons like oil and gas. There is no zakat on that. There is a zakat on the treasure found. For example, someone dig the ground and found a box of gold. This box of gold was belonging to pre-Islamic history. Then what happens is that the person can take that, it's called rikaz in Islam, can take that and he needs to pay 1/5 to the treasure. Okay? So these are the things that might come from the earth and how they are entitled to zakat or not entitled to zakat. Let's come and yes.
Going back to that slide, do you factor in the first dot point, minerals from the earth that are treated with fire? Do you factor in the costs of the treatment and the extraction and the purification, or not?
Actually, this is a question that we are going to come to in a couple of slides. There is a subject which is the zakah is on the substance itself. But in the trading part, you can deduct.
Okay.
In the extraction part, it should be on the value of the actual thing. Okay? So, if there are substances like, for example, gyprock. The gyprock is actually, it's a mineral called gypsum. They take it from the ground. But they don't put fire on it. That doesn't pay any tax. Zakat. Like the building blocks. They make building blocks from rocks. they don't apply any fire on them. Doesn't need any to pay any zakah for that. All right. Let's speak about zakat of trading, which is a key nowadays. So, trading, anything that can be traded. So it's open. So anything that is applicable to be traded in, then that requires to pay zakat based on the requirement. So what happens is that the capital, for example, if I have a company, so I am selling, for example, socks. Each year, I need to sit down with myself, see how much money I have in the bank account for my company, how much money do I have in stock with the selling price. For example, I have socks worth of $20,000. If I sell them, by the price that I'm marking them, it will be $20,000. I have in the bank $5,000. That's $25,000. How much cost? So I paid, for example, pay wages, bills, whatever. Remove that from the amount. Then whatever is left, if it actually exceeded the threshold of the zakah, it had one full lunar year, then I need to pay 2.5% on that. So each year the person needs to sit down and count the value of all the goods and remove all the debt, remove all the fees, all the rent, all the employment fees and so on, and then pay zakah on the rest of that. The conditions for trading, number one, it needs to be reached the threshold. As we said, it is the 85 grams of gold, which is around $5,500. If the net worth of the company is above 5,500, then that's entitled for zakat. One lunar year, so it needs to be every year. The person sits with himself and sees the finances. Intention of trade at the time of buying. For example, someone wanted actually to buy a house. What's the intention of buying his house? He said, oh, this house after 5 years is going to be double the price. So I will buy it now, and then in 5 years' time, I will sell it. Guess what? The house now is a trade, even though you are living inside it. Because the intention is actually to trade the house after 5 years. So every year you need to pay for zakat on that house. But if your intention from the beginning was just to buy the house and live in that house, and then after 5 years someone came to you and said, would you sell your house? And he said, okay, if this is the price, I can sell it. You don't need to pay zakat. Because the intention was not to trade. So any substance, like for example cars. I'm buying a car, but that car, I'm buying it to use it. But I'm buying another car actually to trade it after some time. Then the intention is there. So I need to look at, did I reach the threshold or not? Do I have debts? 1 full year, and then I need to pay zakat. So anything I own, I buy, I need to look at my intention on that, because anything can transfer into a trade. Owned by purchasing. So someone, for example, inherited a house or inherited a company from his father. The moment he inherited all of that, he doesn't need to pay any zakat. After 1 year, he will pay. But the moment of inheritance, no. But if he bought that from his money, then that is going to be counted as part of his wealth, and he needs to pay zakat on this. Not to intend saving of money, so the person is just buying in order to save money. That saving of money, if it reaches the threshold, it's going to be counted in the money section, not in the trading section. So, valuation of the price of the goods. If I have a company, I'm selling some goods, it needs to be at the selling price, not at the buying price. it does not include usables in the valuation. So I am, for example, using some furniture inside my company, some cars inside my company. I don't need to count these. But I count what I sell. I sell socks. I have a bus that delivers the socks. The bus is not counted because it's usable. What is counted is actually the actual, do we call it merchandise? The actual merchandise. It's 2.5% as we said again. Must pay zakat as money, not goods. We are not allowed to pay our zakat as goods from the goods that we have. Someone is selling clothes saying that I will pay my zakat as clothes. No, you cannot. You have to pay them money and you have to give the money to the poor. If the person has own private money and trade money, then he needs to treat each one on separate, and then he needs to pay zakat on both. There is something called Mudarabah. Have anyone heard about Mudarabah? This is a relationship, a transaction between two. I have money and you have skills. I come to you and I say, here is $10,000. Use your skills to trade, for example, or to open a carpenter shop because you are a carpenter, but you don't have money to open a carpenter. So I come and give you $10,000 and I say, open the carpenter shop and then workshop and then work, and whatever comes of profit, it's half-half. And whatever loss, it's on me. The owner of the money is the one who actually bear the loss. The owner, the person who is doing the mudarabah, or the person who is employed, or not employed, but who is working, is the person who does not have a loss, but he shares the profit. That transaction in Islam is called mudarabah. Who pays the zakat for that? The zakat is paid only by the owner of the money, the man who gave the money. He needs to pay the zakat. The person who is using his skills, he doesn't know how much he's going to take. By the end of the year, after they settle all the money, he will take money, which is half of the profit. By that half, if that half above the threshold, and then after one full year stayed above the threshold, he pays the zakat on that. But he doesn't pay zakat when it arrives to his hand. Crops, zakat only on what can be stored, like seeds. No zakats on fruits and vegetables. Okay? Ask.
Stored for how long?
Seeds can be stored up to 1 year or maybe more.
Well, apples today, they put them in fridges, they store them for months and months and months.
Yeah, but they are the key food of the people. Like dates, like wheat, all of these grains, these are what require zakat. Fruits and vegetables, all the scholars agree that they are not entitled for zakat. But what if someone is trading in fruits and vegetables? He doesn't need to count actually, because fruits and vegetables don't last for long. He doesn't store them for long. So it's just moving. Every maybe week or two or a month, he needs to just move these fruits and vegetables. Otherwise, they go off. He needs to pay on his wealth, because he will have wealth from that. So he will pay zakat on his wealth, not on the actual fruits and vegetables. Nowadays, for example, dried fruits, they are entitled for zakat because you can store them for a long time, and they can be actually as wealth, and they have to pay zakat. Abu Hanifa and Malik, for the honey, do I need to pay zakat for honey? If I am having for example, a honey farm or something, the threshold, Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik, they said the threshold of the honey is 65 kilograms and the zakah is 10%. Whereas Imam Shafi and Imam Ahmad, they said there is no evidence that the honey needs to pay zakat. It's like the milk. It's like anything else which is liquid, so that's why it's not entitled to zakat. Yes.
حتى إذا فيها تجارة يعني ما فيش إذا كان في تجارة ما فيش زكاة.
Honey is a fee.
يعني بتصل الخضروات والفواكه.
خضار والفواكه, fruits and vegetables, they are not entitled to zakat,
حتى لو بتاجر فيها.
even if you are trading in it. But your wealth is entitled to zakat because you are going to make money from that. So the money that you have, you need to pay zakat on that money.
So it's
Okay.
not counted as stock.
It's not counted as stock because you cannot stock it for long.
Yeah.
They go off in a couple of days or a couple of weeks. That's why the scholars, they said they are not entitled because you cannot save them for a long time and then sell them.
بس لما تاجر فيها بيكون فيها أرباح.
These profits that you are trading in and taking the money, they are in your account now, in your bank account. One of the key things that you are going to look at when you want to pay zakat is you look at your bank account, how much money you have. So that money that you traded the fruits and the vegetables, it's going to pay zakat because you have the money. Okay? Crops, the zakat, the threshold of the crops is 653 kilograms. So if someone planted wheat, someone planted whatever, and then he had his season gave him 653 kilograms, that's the threshold. So he needs to pay zakat, 10% in what was watered with rainwater, and 5% in what was watered by the farmer. So if the farmer is watering the crop, he needs to pay 5. If the farmer is not watering, is only from the rain, he needs to pay 10.
Abu Ubaidah,
Yes.
in relation to crops, at one point in the past I heard you can pay your zakat in the crop.
From the
From
crop.
the crop, yes. Of the middle quality, not the worst and not the best of your stock.
Some scholars, they said yes.
Okay.
And that's available opinion in there. The majority of the scholars, they say it's the value of the money because sometimes the poor person does not need that crop. He needs the money actually more. Nowadays, for example, the poor person needs actually to pay the bills, need to buy food, which is different. He might not like the food that you are planting. That's why it's better to give it as a money rather than to give it part of the crop. The person does not remove any running cost of the crop. So he needs to see the value of the crop and then pay based on the value. First, zakat on animal, and I have only maybe another 5 minutes, and then we can pray Maghrib, and then we come back to the questions. Animals, I just give you just a quick one because it's a long story, and whoever has cattle, he can go into details and learn about it. But each type of animal has each separated categories, and like if you have sheep, if you have camels, if you have 5 to 9 camels, you pay 1 sheep each year as zakat. If you have 10 to 14, 2 sheep, 15 to 19, 3 sheep, 20 to 24, 4 sheep, and then if 25 to 35, 1 to 2 year camel, and then above that, and so on. It's a criteria. For the sheep, if you have 1 to 39 sheep, you don't pay zakat. If you have 40 to 120, you pay 1 sheep per year. If you are 121 to 202 sheep per year, and so on. For the cows as well, 30 cows, this is the threshold. You pay 1 calf. 40 cows, you pay 1 cow. 60 cows, 2 calves. 70 cows, a cow and a calf. 40 to 79 goats, a goat, and so on. So every type of sheep or cattle, they have their own zakah. Now comes to the rent. Someone has a house and he's renting it out, and he's earning rent from that house. Or he has a shop and renting the shop. Or he has a factory and renting the factory. Does he pay zakat or not? Well, if 1 lunar year came and the threshold satisfied of the income that came to you from the rent, then you pay 2.5% on that. Okay? So if you are taking that rent money, putting it in the account, that amount of money reached the threshold for 1 year, you pay 2.5%. Doctors, teachers, they are earning wages. Do they pay zakat or not? Engineers, they are taking wages. Do they pay zakat or not? Of course not. If their wealth reached the threshold and one full lunar year, then they pay zakat. Last thing, categories for zakat. Allah Azza wa Jal mentioned in the Quran in Surah At-Tawbah, zakat expenditures are only for the poor and for the needy and for those employed to collect zakah and for bringing hearts together for Islam and for freeing captives or slaves and for those in debt and for the cause of Allah and for the stranded traveler, an obligation imposed by Allah, and Allah is knowing and wise. So, can we give our zakat to one category, or we need to divide it into the 8 categories? Nowadays, for example, freeing the slave is not there. So that category disappeared. So you cannot actually pay for that. It's better to divide it, but you can still pay it for one category. The poor, who is the poor? The poor is the person who has no money to satisfy basic needs and no one responsible to spend on him and he has no work. He needs $10, he only has $3. So there is a big gap for his needs. What about the needy, the miskin? The needy, he works and he earns money, but not enough. He needs $10, he only has $8. This is a needy that can take from the zakat. Meaning that the needy is better case than the poor. Workers on zakat, they are given salary, that's part of the share of zakat. For bringing hearts to Islam, that money, for example, can be paid to Muslims, to non-Muslims. If you feel that that person can actually become a Muslim. Even for non-Muslims, you can pay that money to prevent harm from the Muslims or to bring some benefits for the Muslims. So all of this can be used for zakat. The Prophet ﷺ gave non-Muslims zakat to incline their hearts to Islam. Freeing the captives is not existing anymore. Those in debt, so to help someone, for example, had a car crash and a debt of $25,000 came to him because of the car crash, Muslims can collect their zakat and pay their zakat to him to free him from the debt. For the sake of Allah, this is something that the majority of scholars, they said it's directed towards jihad. But the word for the sake of Allah can mean anything. That's why nowadays the scholars, they said, for the sake of Allah, any work for the sake of Allah can be as one category for zakat. Even da'wah work, for example, is for the sake of Allah. So you can pay zakat for any work, for example, for people who are going to do some da'wah for non-Muslims. That's for the sake of Allah. You are doing some, but not for building masjid, for example, not for anything that is not, because masjid specifically cannot be taking money from zakat. But something like work for da'wah, for Islam, for our kids, for anything that can be called for the sake of Allah, lots of scholars have said this can be applied in the zakat. So you can, for example, Ixa is doing da'wah for the sake of Allah, you want to pay zakat for Ixa, you can pay zakat for Ixa, and that will be counted for you as one of the categories.
What about orphanage?
Orphanage? Orphanage because they need. They are part of the poor people. Wayfarer, so someone is traveling and has no shelter, you can actually pay him. Conditions of who deserve not to be rich. The classification of the person who is rich, they said in general, the person can be called rich person if he has the threshold of zakat. If it does not meet the threshold of zakat, he is not rich. So that's why, for example, lots of people can be taking from the zakat, except the workers who work to collect the zakat. Must be Muslim except for inclining the hearts. Not to be from Banu Hashim, the lineage of the Prophet ﷺ. Not to be from those who we are required to spend on them. Meaning that I cannot pay zakat to my father or mother, or to my grandfather or grandmother. I cannot pay zakat to my son or my daughter or to my grandchildren. I cannot pay zakat to my spouse. But I can pay zakat to my brother. Because I'm not entitled actually to spend on him. It's not obligation. Although it's best to actually pay him from sadaqah rather than from zakat. I can pay zakat to my uncle. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that this is going to be counted as two. Silat Rahim, so connecting ties, plus zakat. So those who are, I am entitled to pay in order to sustain their life, I cannot pay zakat to them. I can pay to anyone outside. The person that I'm paying zakat to needs to be sane. I cannot pay zakat to a child who's going to waste the money. I will finish by now here, and inshallah we go pray Maghrib, and let's see if we have questions. Just a second. My .c box. Yes, we have questions, so we'll pray inshallah. We come back to the questions. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So, back to the questions. What is the normal that women have of jewelry? Every country is different than the other country. So some countries, for example, the women will have normally not more than $1,000 of jewels. So that is the norm. But some countries, the normal is $5,000 to $6,000. That's the normal. And you can apply based on that whether you are entitled to pay actually zakat or not. So if the normal, for example, nowadays in Australia, maybe the normal 5,000, 6,000, maybe 7,000 women will have jewels. They are always, because you can see that the pieces of jewels are really expensive. So what they are wearing on day-to-day basis is what defines the normal for the threshold. Regarding shares, what about telecommunications company like Telstra? So someone is putting the shares in Telstra, that's pure service, meaning that you need to pay on the actual value of the shares. So the shares value plus the profit every year times 2.5%. So every year, and make the zakat, for example, on the financial year when they actually announce how much profit did you get and what is the full amount. And so you see how much is the value of the share on that date plus the profit that you gain times 2.5%, and that's the zakat that you need to pay. If I buy shares for investment in what? Investment in the actual shares or investment in the company of the shares? So some people, as we said, they buy shares to invest in the actual shares. So they treat the shares as goods to buy them and sell them. If this is the case, then you need to pay the zakat on the actual shares. And therefore, don't pay zakat on the shares. Investment meaning that you are investing, for example, as sort of income. This is an income for you. So you can pay on actually just only the profit at the end of the year. What happens after 5 years? I sell the zakat like selling the house. So after 5 years, from the day you have purchased these shares, did you intend to use them as actually investment so you can get the end of the year profit and that's it? You did not have any other intention? If yes, then after 5 years, you have an income. You wait 1 year on that income. If it stayed above the threshold, you pay zakat. But if you actually have the intention from the beginning that after 5 years I want to sell them, that's from the beginning intention of trading. So you need to pay zakat on the actual shares. And nowadays, if we look at it, majority of people, they buy the shares that because at some stage they want to sell them. At some stage they want the price to go up and they can sell them and gain money. So the whole intention is actually not investment, meaning that I'm putting my money only to take the profit at the end of the year because that's what I'm aiming for. That's not the reason. People who are putting their investment in the shares, so the shares can go up and they can get as well the profit. So that means that they need to pay on the shares plus the profit. What happens if I have merchandise but I don't have any money to pay the zakat? What if I can't sell the products right now? So meaning that you have merchandise, the amount of money, if you look at all of these, they are stored in your storeroom and they are over $20,000. But you don't have money to pay for the zakat because you are entitled to pay zakat for them. Lots of people, for example, they import like a container from China that worth $20,000, $30,000 of goods, and they don't manage actually to sell them within a certain period of time. These are trading. So they need actually to pay zakat on these goods. If they don't have money, it will stay in their neck until they have their money and then they pay. So if you don't have that amount of money required to pay zakat for that merchandise, then you are okay. Allah will not question you, but you need, as soon as you get the money, to pay that zakat. If you have over nisab amount of gold and only like 300 in cash, do you need to pay zakat for your cash as well? Everything in your wealth, you put it together and then pay zakat on all of them. So you have already cash, you have gold, you have silver, you have shares, you gather everything in one pot and then calculate and then pay zakat on everything. You don't have cash except 300. Is this enough actually to pay your zakat or not? Then if it is not enough, it will stay in your neck until you have the amount to pay for the zakat. So you are not going to be exempted from paying the zakat. If I have 3,000 in August, and then in January I have only 200, then February I have 5,000, from which month do I calculate the lunar year to see if I should pay zakat? You don't do it like this. You pick the month from now and then start. For example, usually people, they will start, as I said, they will pick Ramadan as their month to pay the zakat. So pick your month as Ramadan and see every Ramadan. Don't look at what did you start with. Look how much you ended up with at the end of Ramadan or at Ramadan time when it's time for your lunar year to pay the zakat. How much is in your account? And pay. Okay? If I have $5 in my bank account but I am owed 10,000, do I need to pay zakat? Of course not. You are owed. So meaning that you gave 10,000 to someone. If you give 10,000 to someone and that person is going to pay you back, yes, you have to pay zakat on them. Even if you don't have that money. So that money, the zakat money for 10,000 is $250. So you need to pay $250. You don't have them now, not a problem. When you have them, pay. Okay? But so long as that is your money and it's in the hand of someone, you know it's coming back, then that's your wealth. You need to pay zakat on your wealth. Do you need to pay zakat on superannuation? We said that you don't need to pay zakat on superannuation because you cannot grab it with your hand. And so what happens is that when you get the money of superannuation after you retire, then the zakat is going to be entitled as long as one full lunar year plus the threshold applies on them, then you pay zakat on them. Okay? Any question? Is it clear? Okay. From next week, inshallah, I will start with some contemporary topics. Our next week topic is going to be the ruling of mixing between opposite genders. So we'll discuss this in the next fiqh class, inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. And every week I'm going to announce what the next week is going to be, inshallah.